Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Tuesday, September 13th. I just looked at that. It is Tuesday, September 13th, 2022. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. Those of you who have signed on to Facebook and the Twitter and the Tube of you can see him. Andrew Ivins, back by popular demand. Perhaps nobody has had a better debut on Bucknuts. I just told him no pressure for today. He is the man when it comes to recruiting for 24/7 sports in Florida. This just in, Ohio State is going to make their way in 2024 in Florida, good or bad. So we have Andrew back in. Andrew, thank you for making a return appearance.
Of course, man. Pressure's on. I don't want to strike out here. I feel like I opened up my career with a grand slam. Now I just don't want to be embarrassed at the plate. So hopefully I'm ready to go this morning.
He will not be walking off with a fake ankle injury if he sees we're going to get to 11 first, but we will go here. Okay, here's how we're going to do this. We are going to go over the guys in Florida that Ohio State is actively recruiting. We are going to go over the guys in Florida that Ohio State already has a commitment from. We're going to talk about the recruiting landscape, and then we're going to ask Andrew to weigh in on maybe where he thinks Ohio State sits. It's kind of course, impartial observer. All right. If you guys saw the slide or the graphic for the show today, that there are 5 guys on there. I could have had more. All 5 of those Floridians, those pictures are from when they were here against Notre Dame. So things have changed a little bit, or at least it's time to check in with progress reports. That's a big visit, some official, some non-official. I'm going to give you the 4 names off the top, and I'm hoping you can hack it. Jeremiah Smith, JoJo Trader, Keon, Keeley, and Damon all were here. There's a very kind of viral video of Keon Keeley walking into the shoe for the first time and taking the old OMG breath. Jeremiah Smith basically has a condo here. Give me the latest on those 4 dudes.
Well, let's start with Keon Keeley because he's the highest ranked of the bunch right now. And I actually spoke with Keon last night for the first time in a while, and he kind of revealed to me that there's a chance he could return to Ohio State at some point this season for an unofficial visit. And I think that's certainly notable because when he backed off that commitment to Notre Dame, me and a ton of other insiders kind of assumed that Alabama was in the driver's seat. Now, I still like the Crimson Tide here. I like Nick Saban. Keon's going to be in Tuscaloosa the weekend of October 8th for an official visit. But I do think Ohio State on that Labor Day weekend, they kind of opened some eyes for Keon. You mentioned that video of him walking out in the shoe and being taken back by just the atmosphere and the environment. He also got to shake hands with LeBron James, who he says is kind of his idol. And more importantly, he got a ton of time with Larry Johnson and the rest of that coaching staff. So I think Ohio State definitely impressed him. Florida's the other team that's involved in this recruitment. Keon was in the swamp on Saturday night for that loss to Kentucky. The Gators were actually at his game the night before. He played right there outside of Gainesville in Ocala. So I still like Alabama at this stage, but man, if Keon were to return to Columbus for some game, that would be huge. And just with him, it sounds like a commitment could come in October or November. He's not an early enrollee, but he doesn't want to stretch this thing into February. He's going to be an early signing period kid. So that's the latest with Keon Keeley.
Let's do Jeremiah Smith.
I saw him. I think I've seen him play all 3 of his games this junior season for Shamadan Madonna Prep. I posted on one of my social media accounts on Saturday. Chaminade played Northwestern. Jeremiah Smith had 2 touchdowns. I said there's a lot of schools around the country, a lot of colleges where Jeremiah could probably start today. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but he is just that advanced for a wide receiver. Younger cousin of Geno Smith, who picked up a monster win last night on Monday Night Football for the Seattle Seahawks. So it's in his blood. But this is a 2-team battle right now. He just told me a week ago, or after he had returned from that visit up to Ohio State, that the Buckeyes were out in the front and then Miami was right there. Now, I don't know if a decision is going to come soon. I think a commitment will be, maybe 6, 7, 8 months from now. But Ohio State has given him a ton to think about. The thing I keep hearing when I kind of poll his peers, his contacts, people around him, is he knows that Ohio State can get wide receivers to the NFL. So I think he likes that. Now, Miami on the other side, you got Josh Gaddis, Mario Cristobal, that new look staff in South Florida. They're trying to keep some of these guys home. Jeremiah Smith's a guy they've sunk their teeth into. So 2-team battle. Told me that he's probably not going to return to Ohio State during the season, but sounds like maybe in the spring, January, he could get back up there, probably likely with his SFE teammates. I still like Ohio State there, but I think if you're a Buckeyes fan, Miami this weekend, they play at Texas A&M, kind of the marquee game of the weekend. Jeremiah Smith's expected to be there for an unofficial visit. I think if you like the Buckeyes and you need to root for Miami to lose, because the last thing you need is the Hurricanes to get 7, 8, 9 wins and have the whole city behind them, because down here in South Florida, when Miami's good, everyone talks about them. And I think that's the case. It's only going to help the Hurricanes' chances with Jeremiah Smith.
So if you've seen Jeremiah 3 times, I have to assume that means you've seen his new teammate, JoJo Trader, 3 times. Different type of talent, a little more scat backish or slottish, if you would say that, but he was here, the latest.
Yeah. I think this one is kind of Miami, Ohio State battle as well. I was talking to some industry sources, actually someone, that's pretty connected to this recruitment right after that visit. And they felt like Miami had the leg up on Ohio State. They think if Jeremiah and JoJo, they're not advertising themselves as a package deal, and those things rarely work out.
Myth.
Now they did play youth football together. Actually, a lot of these kids down here in that 2024 cycle. I mean, I'm eventually going to write a big story about it. They played for the Miami Garden Ravens. All these kids have won titles together, so they're close, and that's why they're all at Chaminade. The quarterbacks from there, the running backs from there. It's a pretty cool storyline, but I don't anticipate them sticking together. But as someone put it to me, Ohio State feels like they have a better chance with Jeremiah Smith. They feel like he is more, reactive or acceptive of whatever they're saying. JoJo, they think they got a little more work on the table. They think it might be a little bit more difficult to pry him out of South Florida. Now with Trader, he's also going to be at Texas A&M this weekend. I think they're a team to watch. The Aggies under Jimbo Fisher have gotten more and more aggressive in Miami-Dade, Broward counties. I think he could go out there and he could love it. You also got to think Georgia's eventually going to get involved. And then Florida State, they're both sunk their teeth into these kids as well. So I don't have a crystal ball pick in. I guess I lean Miami if I had to right now, but that doesn't mean he ain't going to be back up in Columbus meeting with Ryan Day and that staff.
Let's finish with Damon Wilson. Actually, he'd be more of a front burner issue, being a 23 kid, defensive end. We know Ohio State wants to finish the class strong defensive end. We talked about Keeley. They're also heavily involved with Mateo Uiagalelei. And then there's Damon Wilson from Venice, Florida, that is.
He's been one where it's hard to get information out of. And, he's kind of gone quiet here. And he told me a few weeks ago when I spoke with him, I'm trying to go radio silent is essentially what I inferred from his conversation until this Thursday. After this game on Thursday night, he's going to play, I think it's on ESPN or ESPN2. Venice is taking on St. Francis Academy. Obviously, they have a ton of talent coming from the Baltimore area. That game is down in Florida. So anyone who wants to watch that, I would, encourage you to tune in. My fiance actually went to Venice High School. That's her alma mater, but it's going to be a great environment. And you're going to get a chance to see Damon Wilson, who's a kid that was on my freaks list, which is the 50 freakiest athletes in the class of 2023. I call him a Ferrari with the durability of an F-250. This is a guy that, he benches 420, back squats 570 pounds, but he's also a finesse pass rusher, and he's really complete. I think Ohio State did an excellent job on that official visit, just kind of reading through some of the tea leaves. That was his second official of the process. He was also at Alabama back in June. He's got 3 to go, though. He's probably going to get to Texas, who, just made somewhat of a statement against Alabama, as weird as that sounds in the loss, but the environment there was looked rocking in Austin. And then Miami is in there. And then Georgia's also, I think, the team you've got to watch deep down. With that being said, I would kind of keep keep an eye on how these defensive end edge rusher dominoes fall. Over the weekend, Georgia hosted Samuel Mpemba, a kid out of IMG Academy, St. Louis native. I think things are trending in the right direction there for Georgia. What does that mean for Damon Wilson? Obviously, you're not going to turn down Damon Wilson, but you could have more edge rushers than you thought previously. So something to monitor. I think that one's going to go the distance, though. I'm not sure how much NIL's even been discussed in that recruitment. Let's be real. I mean, that's the current landscape. I don't know if any of that's been talked about. And I think once we get closer to that early signing period is when we're going to know more about what Damon Wilson wants to do.
There's just only so many guys like that in football. So when you discussed his characteristics there and then the teams that are following him, it's absolutely predictable. The edge rusher, he sounds like almost a prototype. So, and he's from such a nice town.
Well, he spent this summer, because I went out there and I said, man, you didn't do any camps, you didn't do anything. He's like, oh yeah, after my football workouts. And he has if you go in that Venice weight room, his name is on every record in there. And I think he was a state champ last year, didn't competitively weightlift this year. But he said after football workouts in the afternoon, his dad renovates houses. So he would leave the school and then he would go and take a sledgehammer and he's ripping out walls, taking out toilets, throwing them in the dumpsters. So that's what I said, the durability and like kind of the work ethic. He's just beats to a different drum, which is refreshing, I think, in 2022, where so much of this stuff is focused on social media and building my name and image. He's kind of the opposite, and it's refreshing to hear that.
No doubt. It's not like he's transferred around or anything like that.
Right.
So good to know. We're going to take a quick break for you people on the podcast, pay a few bills, come back and talk about guys theoretically that we have in the fold. All right, we're back. By my count, I got 5 guys in the class: Carnell Tate, Brandon Inniss, Mark Fletcher, Cedrick Hawkins, and Bryson Rodgers. When signing day comes around, let's hope we still have 5, maybe even more than that if the great Damon Wilson comes through. Most of the content you're asked to produce on these guys outside beautiful 614, that's Columbus, is about the potential of flippage. Tate and Inniss have been 2 of the more, I'm going to say, well-known names in the class, kind of faces of the recruiting class. Fletcher has been an interesting guy. There was always the talk of 2 backs. He made an incredible, national TV appearance that I think eased the 1 back or main back issues. Bryson Rodgers, a little lesser known. Cedrick Hawkins, they were all here. Can you bring us the latest in order? Let's start with Carnell Tate at IMG.
Yeah, I was going to recommend starting there. And, I said on my show, Preps to Pros, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. We're now in football season. I can't even keep it straight. But I do think there's some legs to the Tennessee smoke. And does that mean he's going to flip to Tennessee or whatnot? I don't think so. From what I've gathered and what I've been told, people inside his camp, I think there's still some people that like Tennessee and are open to the Volunteers and what Josh Heupel is doing with his offense. You got to remember, Tennessee just picked up a huge win at Pittsburgh. They're 2-0. We'll see what they do in the SEC East. So with all that being said, the last time I saw Carnell Tate in person, which was, I think, right before Labor Day weekend, he told me no other visits set up. I'm not going anywhere else. I'm locked in with Ohio State. So I don't anticipate it, but if there's a team to watch, it is Tennessee. So like I just said, if you're an Ohio State fan, right, you want to root against Miami, you should also try to root against Tennessee in the case of Carnell Tate. Now, him as a player, it's kind of been an up and down senior campaign so far against Venice in that preseason. He had I think it was an 86-yard kickoff return. One other catch, in IMG's surprising loss to Miami Central, dropped a few passes, but then he rebounded nicely against DeSmit the following week. So I'm still a big fan of him. I think we're a little bit higher, we 24/7 Sports, than other people. But I think he's a guy that has a chance to come in and play right away, especially with him at IMG Academy. They're getting him ready to go. He's pretty advanced, and I loved his body control, and I think I've said that here in the past.
Yeah, one guy who walked into Ohio Stadium with a T-shirt that said, "I'm him," and that's Brandon Inniss. He is him. If you watch the tape, he does. The term "man among boys" is probably overused in high school football. he really does look like a man among boys in terms of almost he's not the tallest, but he's much stronger and quicker than dudes. And his separation skills for someone who's not necessarily a blazer, very impressive. Just the latest. And obviously, I don't think anyone should be worried about Brennus, but you can make me nervous if you like.
Well, Dan, I think the X factor with him is his football temperament. You know, you just named all those things. I agree. But Brandon Inniss is the type of kid that hates to lose. And we talk about this era with the NIL and all that stuff. Give me as many of those guys in my locker room that are there for the right reasons. And it's because they want to win football games. And, you know, if the guy in the locker next to him it doesn't care, he's going to make sure that guy cares. And I've seen that for, 3, 4, 5 years out of Brandon Inniss. This is a kid that did it as an 8th grader. He's only continued to get better. Last season, he played quarterback for his high school team. You know how important that junior season is for a wide receiver's development. As soon as there's injury to his school, he says, you know what, I'll play some QB. So I love it. And as a senior, he's producing big time. 12 catches, 310 yards. So that's a 25.3 average and 5 touchdowns. He hasn't even played the second half of most of these games. He's been awesome. I think he's solid with Ohio State. You know, he was up there for the visit. I think he tweeted out he's going to get back later in the season. Again, if there's one school to watch out for, it's Miami. They're going to keep trying to chip away. Talking with some people familiar with Brandon, they've said in the past that he kind of grew up a Hurricanes fan. Does that mean he's going to flip? I don't think so. But if there is one school, to monitor, it would be the Hurricanes. But I think he ends up at Ohio State. And like with Carnell Tate, I think he's probably ready to go sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Ironically, for Ohio State recruiting, when it comes to receivers, I'm not saying it's helpful that Smith and Jigba got hurt, but to see Marvin and Emeka step in there just like clockwork, and knowing that Brandon would be in a similar spot, I do think that's probably very appealing. Mark Fletcher, he was here, toothpick in mouth. He's a cool dude, man. I wouldn't want to try and tackle Mark Fletcher. Talk about him. Another guy where Miami seems to really be putting a push on here. I think you can see a theme developing that Mario Cristobal is trying to get Miami's name in the mix with as many high-profile Florida names again as, when I was coming up, Florida, Miami was the juice.
So it's kind of I think a down year nationally at running back. That's been the consensus for a while. And there's some headliners, but it seems like most of these guys are in the state of Florida. I would have Mark Fletcher, to me, how I personally stack him is I have Cedrick Baxter as the top running back in the state. Right behind him is Richard Young. And then number 3 is Mark Fletcher. And then that ESPN game against Los Alamitos, he went off 19 carries, 224 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was bouncing off people. No one wanted to tackle him. And you mentioned Ohio State potentially taking 2 running backs. I think he could be a featured back in some cases. Now, you probably put him in a committee type role. Maybe he's your short yardage guy, but he's a legit 6'1", 230 pounds. He's going to be able to chip college-sized defensive ends, and he can catch the ball out of the backfield. So I really like him. You mentioned the Miami stuff. Dad is a Miami fan. That is accurate. And we'll see if he shows up to any games. I think Ohio State is where he wants to be. But again, like with Tennessee and Carnell Tate, Miami and Brandon Inniss, Miami, you got to watch with Mark Fletcher. And I'll say out of all those 3, I think Mark Fletcher is the one that I think has, there's more of a chance of him leaving than those other 2. I think just because of that with his dad. And when he committed to Ohio State, Miami really wasn't pressing, and that has changed. So, that's just kind of the latest with him.
Definitely one to watch. All right, 2 guys to finish with, probably the least heralded guys from Florida. So I probably should have put them at the beginning. But Cedrick Hawkins, who I know you saw recently, and Bryson Rodgers from Zephyrills.
Sorry, I had a text message. Well, who's the first one?
Duty calls.
Who was the first one? Bryson or Cedrick? Let's start with Cedrick Hawkins. I did see him on this past Friday. Cocoa, his high school, came down and they played St. Thomas Aquinas. And, Cedrick's been an interesting evaluation, a 4-year contributor at Cocoa, which is in the lower classification. But I think I looked yesterday, they have 3 guys currently on active NFL rosters, which is more than a lot of schools in the Sunshine State. So what am I saying? I mean, the school produces talent. Ced's a guy that we're trying to figure out what to do with him. Is he a guy we trend back in the rankings? Is he a guy we move up in the rankings? And after seeing him on Friday night, I'm so much more of a fan. And that's because he went both ways for Coco. I mean, they were outmatched, but Cedrick got a ton of run at wide receiver, which was a first for him. And I asked him that after the game, hey, is this new? And he's like, I haven't done this since youth football. So he finished, I think it was 6 catches for about 80 yards, 8 tackles on defense. He's going to need some time, I think, to rework the body. I mean, he can't be over 165 pounds, 170 pounds, which is fine because I think he's got the instincts. And, I don't know how big of it was on your message board or how big of a deal it was when he visited Auburn back in the summer. But there's some talk that from the Auburn side of things that they have a legitimate chance of flipping him. And after talking with Cedrick after that game, I don't think that's the case. I think he's locked in with the Buckeyes. I know he was up there for the Notre Dame game. I don't think he really wants to look around. Florida State had coaches at that game on Friday night, but doesn't sound like he's going to get up to visit the Seminoles. He's not an early enrollee, but I think he's going to sign early with Ohio State, and he'll be a developmental guy. Maybe he's not ready year 1, year 2, but in that new 3-look safety defense, I think he's going to have a chance to carve out a role.
Bryson Rodgers.
So Bryson, I think, is kind of he's
the forgotten guy, man.
He is the forgotten guy, and I loved him out in Las Vegas at that overtime 7 event. I think he made the dream team, or he was close on making my dream team, which was a collection of the best guys out there. But he had a really, really good week, and I think he's kind of going through it right now as a senior. When he was a junior at Wiregrass Ranch, he played with Rocco Becht, Anthony Becht's son, who's a quarterback that signed with Iowa State. So, I mean, if you're ever going to play with a guy like that, obviously your number is going to be much better. His school is going through some growing pains. He also lost his counterpart, Isaiah Williams. It was a younger wide receiver 2. He's transferred schools. So he's kind of the only guy there. In this past week against Zephyr Hills, 2 catches for 13 yards, kind of, but I don't know how much of that's on him. This offense is kind of one-dimensional. So we're still fans, just interested to see how the season goes. And I'll say, like with him, Cedrick Hawkins was playing some offense. Well, Bryson Rodgers is playing safety there at Wiregrass Ranch. And to me, I mentioned it with Brandon Inniss, that says a lot. Some of these guys don't want to go both ways. They fear injury. And the fact that you're getting 2-way snaps and you're going to do whatever it takes to win, I think that's super important.
All right, I've kept Andrew longer than I said, so we're going to skip the national recruiting vibes. You can check out, make sure also, though, that you're checking out his podcast, Preps to Pros. He does it routinely. That and the Wolfong Whip Around. We're just lucky to get these superstars on the air. That's why we do it so early in the morning before the paparazzi gathers outside the Ivins household. Let's finish with this. You've seen now a few weeks of college football. We saw Anthony Richardson, for example, go from middle of the first round to first round draft pick to the 3rd round. We've seen a lot of different things on the grid. Alabama is now down to number 2, Ohio State's 3, Georgia's 1. After a few weeks, where do you put Ohio State in context? Now that you got a chance to see the others. Obviously, Ohio State has, caviar dreams, champagne dreams here. And it's almost more important, I think, to see how the other teams look so you don't catch like LSU in the Joe Burrow year or a Trevor Lawrence year or even Alabama a couple years ago. I don't see, and this is just my opinion, I don't see a team like that out there. Georgia's very impressive, but they did lose a number of guys on defense, as talented as they are. Alabama, we saw what Texas was able to do to them, at least stay in the game. I think Ohio State has as good a chance as ever. What's your vibe on the national situation?
I kind of agree with you. And I know we said this before we hit record. I mean, the Alabama win wasn't pretty, but at the end of the day, it was a win. And Alabama's star players produced. You look at that Will Anderson sack. I mean, that was a monster play. Sure, they kicked a field goal, but, that's a Heisman hopeful making a Heisman play. And then we saw what Bryce Young did. So I think Alabama's good. There are some questions about the receivers, but Jahmyr Gibbs, the transfer running back, is awesome. Georgia, you mentioned that defense. I think I saw that they're last in the country right now. They have 1 sack so far. I'm not concerned. I mean, just being on this side of things and, keeping track of the talent acquisition and looking at the two deep, like the defense isn't taking a step back. And I think with Stetson Bennett taking a step forward, I mean, watch out for Georgia. The big question for me when we look at Ohio State is it's hard to get a read on what Michigan is right now. I mean, they haven't really played anyone. I'm a big JJ McCarthy guy, but we got to see this new look team get tested a little bit with Josh Gaddis gone and the changes they've made on both sides of the ball. So I don't know. I'm not a huge believer in Clemson. I think they have some massive issues when it comes to play calling. And then, like you said, you kind of scroll down the list. Is there a Joe Burrow-esque LSU team that catches fire and finds magic? I don't know. I mean, I love Arkansas and what they're doing, but are they going to run out of gas? Miami, we're going to learn a lot about them this weekend at Texas A&M. I think a lot of people chalk that up as an easy Miami win, but I used to cover the Hurricanes, and they've never played good in this spot, or at least as of late. So, still some questions. I just, as much as people probably hate to hear it, I still think Alabama and Georgia is kind of the cream of the crop. And, Ohio State, I loved what they did there in week one, but then you start wondering, like, how good actually is Notre Dame? Because I think that Notre Dame is in for some serious, it's a lot different outlook on the season given that quarterback situation. And you look at their schedule, like, are they going to be able to score with North Carolina? Everyone thought Syracuse was going to be a win. Well, Syracuse looks improved. So it's just interesting how things can change. Like you said, Anthony Richardson goes from number one to a guy that needs to come back to school in the span of 7 days. It's just funny.
We appreciate Andrew stopping by. I've already told him his first performance guaranteed that he was going to become a regular contributor. I'm going to get major kudos from the Bucknutters for having him back. Andrew, thank you very much for your time, brother. We always appreciate it.
Of course. Anytime, guys. Welcome. Thanks for having me back.